Auckland, stand by to mask up if you're taking public transport. As for everyone else, you need one too if you're flying anywhere around the country. Come Thursday, the government's making masks mandatory in certain situations, but there are a bunch of exemptions. It follows a new community COVID case in the super city last week. The AUT student, who was employed at a high street clothing store, went to work when she was potentially infectious and also took a number of Ubers. The drivers had to be tested for COVID and isolate until their results were back. As well as people on public transport, taxi drivers will have to wear masks, but their passengers won't. Joining me now is John Hart from the Taxi Federation. John, what do you think of the new rules? So drivers have to mask up, but not passengers.
Yes, well, we're struggling to understand the logic behind that. It seems to us if there's a danger of bringing an infection into the car, then the danger rests with everyone, and passengers in taxis should also be wearing masks. But maybe there's some logic behind it, but they haven't told us what it is.
So ideally, what would you like to see?
Everyone should be required to wear masks. I mean, it doesn't seem to make an awful lot of sense for someone to get off an aeroplane wearing a mask and get into a bus and continue to wear the mask, but get off the aeroplane and get into the taxi and take their mask off. That just doesn't seem to make much sense. But, maybe there is a reason, but they just haven't bothered to tell us.
Well, does this put your drivers in a kind of, a really awkward situation?
Well, I think it does, really, because they're vulnerable. They're sitting in a car by themselves most of the day, exposed to any infection that people might bring into the car. And taxi companies are doing their best to keep vehicles clean, and they're introducing, in most cases, fairly rigid cleaning regimes. But it just seems that it would be an awful lot more logical if the passengers were required to wear masks as well.
Did anyone from government consult with you about this?
Prior to the last lockdown in Auckland, or prior to the rules on the last lockdown in Auckland, we had a call from the Ministry of Transport who asked our opinion, and that was our opinion, that it was, if anyone in a taxi was required to wear a mask, it should be everyone, not just one party. But when they introduced them, they excluded passengers, with no explanation to us as to why they've done that.
So the Ministry of Transport basically has your official position on this, so you would assume that the government knows that as well, and your position has not changed since the first time you gave your view?
Yeah, that's correct, yes.
So, how safe do drivers feel in this environment?
Well, I think drivers must feel vulnerable. Everyone who comes into contact with the public must do, but people in taxis are quite close. So you're probably more vulnerable in a taxi than you would be in, say, a shop or a cafe or something like that.
At this stage, it's rules that apply to Auckland as well. What do you think about the rest of the country?
Well, we don't have any problem with these rules being introduced around the country. If it's thought that that's the thing to do to keep us all safe, then we were very happy to go along with it. But we would just like someone to tell us why it's safe for passengers to travel in taxis without a mask on.
So John, what would you like to say to people who will potentially be travelling in taxis after Thursday when the rule comes in where your driver has to wear the mask but the passenger not? What would you want to say to passengers?
Please wear a mask. We're all in this together. We all need to keep safe. So please, when you get in a taxi, wear a mask.
In terms of QR codes, I'm just curious. So they're displayed in taxis, are they as well?
Yes, they are, yes.
Yeah, and what kind of feedback are you getting from your drivers about whether people actually use them?
Well, I think during the lockdown in Auckland there was widespread use, but then it tapered off after that, just as it has in the rest of the community. Hopefully it'll pick up again.
Because I suppose that is essential for your drivers who may encounter, goodness knows how many individuals in their car over the period of a day and days.
Yeah, that's right. And the QR code is just as important in taxis as it is anywhere else. Yeah, absolutely critical.
So do you have a message for the government on the position they've taken on this, John?
Well, please discuss it with us. I mean, if there is a reason for what they've done, we'll go along with it. But we fail to see what it is, and they haven't told us what the reason is. So please discuss it with us. We're just as keen to keep the country safe and to keep everyone safe as they are. So, we're here to talk to them.
Appreciate your time this evening, John. That's John Hart from the Taxi Federation there.